And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, your Indiana Hoosiers defeat Houston Baptist 103-61. This is a game where the Hoosier offense kind of sputtered out of the gate a little bit, if you think all the way back to the beginning of the game. But my goodness, did they make up for it, finishing with 100 points for the first time since the second game of the season. And it was really nice to see. Indiana had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sequences between TV timeouts where they scored 10 points or more, finishing with 103. A solid victory overall for Indiana, both the offensive and defensive end. And we are going to break it all down for you on this episode of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I am your host, Jared Morris. I am joined on this episode by Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. And let's begin, as we always do, with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And for tonight's Hoosier Proud banner moment, I want to take you all the way back to the first half because, again, this is a game that Indiana wins 103-61. They win by 42 points, and they were firmly in control for most of it. But if you think back to the beginning of the game, it was a little bit of a sluggish start for Indiana. The Hoosiers only led 5-4 at the first TV timeout. It was kind of a back-and-forth game there for a little while until Indiana finally was able to kind of move the lid from the net, make a couple of three-pointers in a row. One was by Curtis Jones, and the next one was by Robert Johnson. And this is where the banner moment comes in, because I thought it was another great sign of Robert Johnson's leadership and of him basically saying, all right, it's kind of early. We're playing a little bit sluggish. Let's go. Let me make a couple of plays to get us going. And so Robert made that three-pointer and then goes right down on the other end of the court and is playing terrific defense. And his man tries to go backdoor on him. Great defensive fundamentals, just turns, knocks the ball away because they tried to pass to his man who was cutting to the basket. He gets a steal. It goes the other way for a Josh Newkirk dunk. Indiana leads 18-12 at that point, and they were firmly in control and would then extend the lead from there and never really look back. But I thought it was, again, another great sign of Robert Johnson being that leader, stepping up when his team, not really playing great. They weren't playing bad, but just a little bit sluggish. Robert Johnson makes a couple of big plays. That leads to momentum, and Indiana rolls from there and obviously ends up with a 42-point victory. So nice job by Robert Johnson. Our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And tonight's banner moment, of course, brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Proud, an Indiana-based brand by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. Connor and the team at Hoosier Proud offer a line of T-shirts and accessories that are unmatched for anyone who wants a unique, stylish way to display their own pride in being a Hoosier or your pride in being an Assembly Call audience member, because I am wearing my Assembly Call T-shirt right here. You can see it. We moved our production of our Assembly Call T-shirts over to Hoosier Proud, and so you can go check those out at HoosierProud.com and use the promo code Assembly to receive a 15% discount on your entire order. That's promo code Assembly, ASSEMBLY, to receive 15% off at HoosierProud.com. All right, let's make the extra pass, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. We will start with Andy Bottoms, his Bottoms line brought to us by Bracketology.fm.
Well, I thought, in a lot of these games, the thing that we want to look for is guys who don't get as many minutes normally, and the bench played terrific today. 37 bench points in total. You had Curtis Jones with 11, Devontae Green with 8. Freddie McSwain even had 8. Deron Davis had a tough time getting going, ended up fouling out and only scored 3 points. And McRoberts, again, with no points, didn't look at the basket a great deal, as we've talked about for a bit, but really came in, made some good hustle plays, played good defense, 4 assists, really got the ball moving. And then, of course, cannot be talk about the bench without talking about Tim Priller's 4 points today, which put IU at the century mark, which gave my bold prediction some truth, which I was worried about at halftime with only 42. But I just thought all those guys were able to come in and really contribute today. McSwain had 4 rebounds, just a lot of good minutes for those guys, but I thought they were productive minutes. They weren't just out there to be out there jacking up shots and doing things like that. Crean got to see a lot of different lineups and give other guys some rest. So I thought a really positive experience for all those guys. You could look down each of them and really talk about positive contributions they made. So while there's a lot of things to not like about some of these more cupcake games that we have early in the season, I think this hopefully is one we can look back on and say, hey, these are valuable minutes that the freshmen and the newcomers got, and those will pay dividends later down the line.
All right, let's kick it over to Ryan for Ryan's rant, brought to us by thebiglead.com.
Yeah, if you listen to our radio show on Fridays, which you should, Assembly Call Radio, Uh, you know that we have a bold prediction segment, and you know that I was viciously robbed of a victory on my bold prediction segment this week. Jared, before you say anything, this is my time. Leave it alone. And this week, my prediction was that I thought Thomas Bryant against Houston Baptist would bounce back from sort of some lower level efforts and have a double-double. Well, unfortunately, he finished with 9 points. But he did finish with 13 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and 4 blocks. So I think it's fair to say he certainly had a huge impact on the game. He only took 2 field goals, though. So, Tommy, what are you doing to me, man? I picked you to have a double-double, and you only shot the ball twice from the field. I've been saying it for a couple weeks. I think Thomas needs to get more aggressive in calling for the ball and being a little more selfish. And also, he normally 7 of 8 from the free throw line for a big man is good, but that 8th one could have given me the double-double and a win on my bold prediction. So I'm holding that against him. He's got to make that 8th free throw, got to be perfect from the line. And I think Thomas Bryant's just got to start shooting more, and I think the guys got to start finding him in the post more. I think during Big Ten season, that's going to be a huge part of the offense, and you got to start looking for it. So, I just missed my bold prediction this week, and I kind of know how Jared felt earlier in the year when he missed his.
It stinks to miss it by 1 point. Hey, so there's some interesting.
You can tell what kind of game this was because we're all just rooting, like openly rooting for our own bold predictions. At least I was on Twitter, as was Ryan. So that's the kind of game this really turned into. I think that's pretty telling that 2 of the first 3 segments were something to do with those.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting numbers, and I want to get to those in a second. But Ryan, your rant, I think, brings up an interesting point, and we talk about it there in the context of our bold predictions. But I think this is an interesting point in the context of Indiana's season. We're now 2 straight games where Thomas Bryant, to his credit, has really delivered. I mean, his rebounding improvement from last year to this year is absolutely terrific. I mean, he's doing such a better job on the glass. The numbers back it up. So does the eye test. His defense, I mean, the blocks that he had. The 2 blocks he had in the first half, I mentioned this on the halftime report, he showed such excellent patience. And that's a lot of times an underrated attribute for a shot blocker is patience. Because a lot of times, you go for the first movement, you're just swiping down as soon as you can, and you pick up a foul or you miss the opportunity for the block. And Thomas did a really good job of being patient. And so, he's producing all throughout the stat sheet, but that's 4 shots over the last 2 games. And, I want to get your guys' thoughts. Is this something now that we should start to be concerned about? Because, I mean, he had 9 points. He got to the free throw line. He ran the floor, was able to get some opportunities that way. But I'm starting to get a little bit concerned that we can't get our potential All-American big man with so many skills more than 4 shots in 2 games. And I wonder, do you look at James Blackman Jr., a guy who's taken 18 shots today, and say he needs to, kind of step back a little bit, recognize that we got to get Thomas involved and do that? Is this where Thomas needs to post up better? Is there something in the offense that's not going? Like, Andy, we'll go to you first, and then Ryan, I want to get your thoughts on it too. But what is the remedy here to get Thomas back involved so we see the guy that we saw in the second half against Kentucky offensively?
I just think there are definitely times when it feels like he's open. I just don't know that they're looking for him enough. And I think it's one of those things where you can lament a lot of things about games like this. And I think it gets you into the habit of like, we can score however we want to, whenever we want to, and it almost doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, today, 28 of 60 field goal attempts, I believe, were 3-pointers against a team with very little size inside. So, we talked a little bit about after the last 2 games, IU, that percentage was maybe, a third of IU shots as opposed to half of them like it was today. And so just didn't really feel like there was a concerted effort to get it to him. I don't know that it was him not getting open. I think there's also opportunities off of, pick and roll type scenarios to get him the ball that aren't necessarily traditional post ups that he's able to take advantage of. But there were a couple times they got it into Deron Davis. I think even Juwan Morgan had a post up or 2. But overall, I definitely just felt like there wasn't that concerted effort, and I don't know if it was just because it didn't feel like they needed to today. But it's not a part of the game that you can just flip on when you feel like it when the competition starts to get a little bit tougher. So those are. As much as we say, hey, it's good for the freshmen and those new guys to get some minutes here. I mean, you still want to, treat this game like a practice if you want, but, you got to practice things that you're going to want to do in the game. So that was definitely disappointing to me. I don't think it's necessarily for a lack of effort on his part in trying to establish position. Maybe Ryan feels differently, but I didn't necessarily think it wasn't because he wasn't open.
No, I agree. I don't think it's because he wasn't making moves and not trying to get open. But if you look at it against SIU Edwardsville, he was 3 of 11 from the field and had a really rough night as far as finishing at the rim and taking shots. And then the last 2 games, he's reined it in and only taken 4. So it's almost like an overreaction to a rough game. I mean, he shot 27% from the field in that SIU game. So I would say I think that there's a couple things at play here. First of all, he's going to be the first guy defenses try and take away. They're going to shade over, try and take away, trying to immediately help as soon as he gets the ball, sort of back off passes and make it tougher to make the entry. And again, as you guys said, if they're scoring any way they want, they're not going to make a concerted effort to get one guy the ball. I think that's fair to say. And he, to his credit, has been unselfish. He had 5 assists in the last 2 games combined. He's had 8 blocks. He's not let in 4 steals. He's not let his lack of offensive post touches impact the way he's played. But yeah, I do think that I think it's also on Thomas too. He's such an unselfish guy. He needs to call for that ball in the post. He needs to ask for it. He needs to demand it. And his teammates respect him enough that they'll give him the ball if he sort of insists. But I think he's sort of deferring to other people. And I don't think that's the right formula for this team, especially going into the Big Ten when you're going to need easy buckets. And let's face it, you get Thomas Bryant in the post with a guy on his back, that's an easy bucket instead of having to work it around the perimeter a few times and get a 3. So I think that he's going to have to start demanding it. And I think, as we've said, I think the guards are going to have to start looking for it more consistently.
In other words, Thomas, treat post touches like Ryan treats airtime here on the assembly call.
Yes, hog it. Hog it for all it's worth.
All right, coming up on the assembly call, there's some numbers that are really interesting that jump right out at me on the stat sheet. We're going to get to those as well as roll through some individual player performances because there were some notable ones today. But first, I do want to take a quick minute and tell you about our other sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets online for sports and concerts, as I'm sure you have found, has been a confusing process for a long time. It's always been hard to find the best deal for that game or show that you want to go to, and none of those older ticket sites really seem to want to change that. But SeatGeek is different. They've come along and they've created an amazing app and website that really does make it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets. And that's why SeatGeek is always the first place I go to look for tickets for a game or concert, because everything about SeatGeek is designed to make life easier for sports and music fans. They do all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites and ensuring that you get the best possible deal. SeatGeek does all the work, and you save time and money. And best of all, listeners of the assembly call get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. So here's how you get that $20 rebate. Download the SeatGeek app. It's a free app. Go to the settings tab and click add a promo code and enter the promo code assembly, ASSEMBLY, and SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. So again, download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code assembly today. All righty, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are discussing Indiana's win over Houston Baptist. It was a 103-61 victory for the Hoosiers. And guys, a couple of numbers that jump out to me looking at the stats. One is rebounding. Indiana did not do a very good job rebounding in the first half. Only rebounded 26% of their misses on the offensive end. And Indiana is a team that, when they're rebounding well, is up in the 40s, and they were actually down in the 60s defensively as well. In the second half, they got that turned around, really came out, made a concerted effort on the glass, which I knew was going to happen because Crean in the pregame show was talking about how much he wanted to see Indiana rebound, and you had to think he wasn't going to be very happy after their first half rebounding. And I always like to see when Indiana can take something that was a negative in the first half, even in a game like this, and really turn it into a positive in the second half. I think that's a good sign of coach and team being in sync. I liked seeing that. And then turnovers. For the game, Indiana with a turnover percentage of 16.3%, well below their season average coming in of 23%. And there was a flurry of turnovers at the beginning of the second half. I think they had 4 within the first 4 or 5 minutes. But outside of that, again, Crean mentioned on the pregame, I want to play aggressive, which Indiana certainly did, putting up 103 points. And he said, look, we're going to make some turnovers playing aggressive. And those are okay, but we can't have the boneheaded turnovers, the just unforced turnovers. And that's where I thought Indiana really made strides today, because there's only 1, maybe 2 turnovers I can think of that just struck me at the time as really egregious. Otherwise, Indiana, made some turnovers trying to make plays, and that's going to happen. But to get that number to 16.3%, that's the kind of percentage that if this team can do that, and rebound offensively like they normally do and do everything else the same as they normally do, that's the kind of percentage that gets you to a Big Ten championship and helps you make a run in March. And so I think seeing Indiana start to get into that habit now as we approach Big Ten play, that to me is one of the biggest takeaways from this game, and I love seeing that. Andy, any other numbers that jumped out to you in particular today?
Well, to go back to the rebounding, I just thought in the first half, and I tweeted this a couple times, that they just really weren't getting a body into anybody. They were just trying to go out jump people and get rebounds. It was very similar to a third and fourth grade girls basketball game I coached earlier today, where my daughter's team just like was kind of waiting on the ball to come to him instead of actually blocking people out. So it was, I definitely noticed a difference in that from a results, but also just from a technique and fundamental standpoint in the second half. I think the turnovers, like you said, there were a few where they were just trying to make kind of, I don't know, even want to say it's a spectacular play, but they're really trying to push the ball up the floor in transition and cross the court, and those got taken away. But I think those are, aggressive turnovers as opposed to sloppy. So I thought that was good. And I think the blocks were another one. I mean, IU continues to really be able to block shots. It says there were only 5. It feels like there were more as they went through, at least the stat feed that I'm looking at. But I think, we continue to see a really good presence inside between Bryant, Deron Davis. I don't know if he had any today, but his block shots really well. Morgan had the one that he swatted off of Devontae Green's head. I thought that was good. And then assists. He had 19 assists on 33 made field goals. And I think for a while it was, at the 80% mark or close to it as we went through that. So I think those are all good signs of moving the ball. Saw guys for the most part really making the extra pass. And I thought overall, some good ball movement and those kinds of things that'll serve them well as we go forward.
Yeah, one thing to remember is this was an early Saturday game, and a lot of times those games, for whatever reason, start off slow for both teams, just sloppy, sort of just not into it because it's not the normal routine you have for a game. It's usually an evening game of some kind. Most games are. So you saw in the first half, Indiana shot 41.4%, got out rebounded 21-20. And in the second half, they shot 67.7% from the field and out rebounded Houston Baptist 25-10. So it seemed like once the guys got warmed up and locked in and maybe got a talking to at the half, they really locked in and did what they were supposed to do. And again, it's not an excuse that they come out flat like that, but like I said, you see that on these early Saturday games. You see it even in conference. So I don't know. I thought that in the second half they really locked it in. We were kind of texting back and forth about the way James Blackman Jr. was playing. I thought he played much better in the second half. I'm sure we'll get to that, but I thought that he was a little loose with the ball in the first half, maybe shooting too much and shooting before he was set. And I thought in the second half he really locked in.
Yeah, let's talk about James, because he's the guy I wanted to talk about next, because frankly, I did not think he played well in the first half. And I thought he reverted a little bit to freshman and sophomore year James Blackman Jr., where he was hunting shots, where his defensive attentiveness wasn't good. There was a stretch in the first half where he just completely lost his man on defense, and the guy went right in for a wide open layup. On the next possession down on offense, he hunted a shot, missed it. He was lazy getting back, just kind of jogging slowly getting back, and his man was the one who went and scored. And I thought it was the kind of sequence that would really get people upset his freshman and sophomore years. But to your point, Ryan, and to James's credit, I thought he did play better in the second half. And in particular, he played better. You'll recall, middle of the second half, Indiana had, I think, 4 of their freshmen out there, and they turned it over on a couple straight possessions. Things got a little sloppy. Tom Crean took a timeout, looked pretty pissed off when he took the timeout, and he actually had James Blackman Jr. lead that timeout. And James came back in the game, and right after that, Indiana went on an 8-0 run. And James had a really nice offensive rebound. He made a three-pointer. He had a great drive to the basket and found Freddie McSwain, who had a terrific cut from the corner. And it was like James led the timeout. And because he kind of put himself on that pedestal of leadership, it's like he came out right after that and was locked in, focused on doing everything he needs to do. And that's one of the reasons why I love Tom Crean, kind of stepping back and giving players the opportunity to lead. Because think about, if you're in a pickup game, and you're telling everybody to, to start playing defense, or you get on guys, it's naturally going to raise your level of play because you've said something. Now you have to back it up and do it on the court. And I really liked seeing that from James. And so, not going to judge too harshly on the first half in a Saturday game against Houston Baptist. What I liked seeing is that in the second half, he came out and played much better, like the team MVP, which I called him on Friday, which I think he's been so far this year. I thought we saw much more of that in the second half.
Yeah, let me jump in here real quick. I just want to echo what you said. I mean, think about this. He played 15 minutes in the first half, 3 of 11 from the field, 3 of 8 from the from 3-point range. and had 9 points and 2 turnovers. In the second half, when he reined his game in, he scored the same amount of points, 9, didn't turn the ball over, had an assist, was 4 of 7 from the field and 1 of 2 from 3, and had 1 more rebound in fewer minutes. So it actually works to his benefit to rein his game in, get everyone else involved. That leaves him with better shots. And so I think that it's we've talked about James maturing offensively and maturing off the court as well. And I think that the first half, as you said, was immature James, and the second half was very mature James. And he just seemed to almost like the light went on that, hey, if I get everyone else involved, maybe things will be easier for me. And they are. It's, it's amazing how that works. And it's really great to see this Indiana team, even the new guys, being so unselfish because it makes the game easier for them.
See, Thomas, you see how Ryan just jumped in there and said, let me take it? That's how you demand the ball. That's what we want to see.
Be aggressive.
Be aggressive, Thomas. Andy, your thoughts on James?
Not too much other than what you guys have already said. I think in the first half, he made himself really easy to guard. He just kind of stood around, chucked threes, and it's not that he couldn't get those, but it was a case where, you could get that shot whenever you want on a day like today in a game like this. And not to belabor the point of what kinds of habits that games like this can, bring up. I think it was just another case of, it really doesn't matter. We can do whatever we want against this team. So I'm going to just keep taking these shots that were not. It wasn't even necessarily that they were bad shots. It was just you could have gotten a better shot, and you could have gotten a better shot by, working the ball around. But, by the end of the second half, he had that really nice drive and dish to Freddie McSwain cut into the basket. And I thought, that shows how he's able to make a defense uncomfortable. He makes a few shots and really tries to take it off the dribble. Everybody reacted to him and opened up an easy basket for somebody else. So like to see a little bit more of that. I think easy to get caught up in a game like this and say, hey, I'm just going to go out and score a bunch of points. And he certainly ended up doing that, but did seem to rein it back in a little bit in the second half. So that's a good thing to see.
So we're definitely going to get to a good IU Butler preview because we don't obviously have a post-game show between now and the Butler game. And so we want to get that before Andy has to leave here in about 10, 15 minutes. But before we get to that, let's linger on this game for just a little bit longer because I thought there were some really notable, interesting performances, guys. And let's just go around the horn and talk about some of these interesting performances. I'll start with Zach McRoberts, who 0 points but 4 assists and 2 steals. And there was a play in the second half where it was down on the defensive end, and there was a defensive rebound. Indiana's kind of fumbling around with it, and Zach McRoberts dove on the ground. He didn't even get the rebound. He just tapped it out to a point where Indiana could get it. They go down on the other end. I think it resulted in a James Blackman Jr. dunk. And it was such a great play. I mean, such a quintessential Zach McRoberts, kind of doing Colin Hartman things type play, but just, giving up his body, doing what it takes to make a play. And that's, look, we're going to see how much Zach McRoberts can play come Big Ten play because he's been really good in these cupcake games. The game was a little bit too much for him against North Carolina. We didn't see him get as involved there. And so I'm going to be curious to see how much he can do in Big Ten play. But making plays like that, that's leadership by example. That's grit and toughness. And it was great to see from Zach, who really had another solid day leading Indiana in assists. And as I mentioned on the halftime report, in the first half, he had a couple of passes got to him, wide open three-pointers. And Zach, we really want to see you look at the basket, present yourself as an option. He actually overpassed to James Blackman Jr. and Devontae Green on 2 straight possessions, and they had worse shots than he would have had. But because he makes such good passes and gets it right in that shooting pocket, Chronic Hoosier pointed this out on Twitter, James and Devontae were able to have quick releases and get the shots off before the defenders got there, and they made both of them. So it's those little fundamental plays Zach makes, and that's why he continues getting time, and we saw more of it today, which was really nice to see. Andy, I know you want to talk about Juwan Morgan.
Yeah, I mean he did miss a shot today, which was obviously disappointing. But I think they said he set a new IU record by making 14 straight over the course of these few games before he did miss a 3. But I thought again played really well off the ball, 7 rebounds, a couple assists, and I think just really is settling back into. So if Ryan had made his prediction that he would get back to playing like Juwan Morgan, I think today's game would have been a perfect one for that, and most certainly would have given credit for it. But
by the way, I should have stuck with my bold prediction of Juwan missing a shot because he only missed 1. I think that might have qualified.
Maybe
and a free throw. And a free throw. You didn't specify which one. You said a shot. It could have been a free throw or a field goal percent.
Stop reading so much into my words, Ryan. Let's
fair. But I thought overall did really well. He continues to do a really good job of getting to the line. Had 5 free throws, so 13 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and a steal in just 20 minutes of action. I thought he continued to play well, and we'll see what happens as we move forward when OG's been cleared. Assumingly he's going to slip right back in the starting lineup, and Morgan comes, goes back to that 6-man role that we've talked about. And hopefully these games have given him the confidence to really come in and play like this, because if he comes in and gives the productivity that he's been given these last few games as the first guy off the bench, it's going to be extremely important for this team as they move forward. So I think a good stretch of these games for him in particular to really get his confidence back, and really seems to have found his role again in some ways, and stepped into that. So another really strong performance from him.
Ryan, I thought this was by far the best we've seen Curtis Jones play since the Kansas game. And we saw him initiating the offense a lot. I mean, basically playing a point guard role. And I thought he was really good. Didn't turn it over. 2 assists, was in double figures. Really solid effort from Cujo today.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really good. I mean, just watching him before he came in, as in high school, you could just see the potential there with his athleticism and his ability to score the basketball. But the athleticism helps him be a good defender. And he already seems to be an aggressive defender, not necessarily a smart defender, but that comes with experience. I mean, most freshmen are really dumb defenders. So I think that he's going to sort of rein in that aggressiveness a little bit and only use it when he needs to. But the thing I liked about today was he was much more reined in offensively. No turnovers was a big deal for him, because he can get loose with the basketball. And when I say loose with the basketball, I don't necessarily mean that he's going to give it away. I mean that he's just not solid with it. You can just see that if somebody sneaks up behind him, they can knock the ball away. He's just not strong with it yet. But 11 points, 3 rebounds. I thought he had some stretches of fantastic play where he was involved. He had a great alley-oop to Thomas Bryant, and that was the Huntington Prep connection there, as they used to play high school ball together. But I think that you're starting to see flashes of him, of the player he's going to be, and I think he's going to be fantastic. And he's a great guy to have coming off the bench for 10, 12 minutes of really energetic play right now. He had 19 minutes today, obviously in a blowout, but I think that he's a guy who's going to have a really defined role when we hit Big Ten play, sort of looking like OG Anunoby and Juwan Morgan did last year, where they know exactly what they have to do when they come in, and I think that'll help him grow.
Let's talk about Josh Newkirk as well, who, 10 points, 3 assists, 3 boards. And I thought he really took to heart what Tom Crean wanted, which was play aggressive, make the simple play. Let's not get out of control. And he had a couple of turnovers, but I thought overall Josh really picked his spots well on offense. And just not a spectacular performance, but a really solid performance from Josh. 3 for 5, knocked down a 3-pointer. Exactly the kind of effort you want to see from him, Andy.
Yeah, I thought he continued to play well, and really on the defensive end, again, I thought he was disruptive. He did get beat 1-for-1 backdoor play, but I thought overall he continues to be really active, and I think that we had looked for a lot of positive things from him defensively coming into the season, and maybe we didn't notice it, didn't feel like we saw a lot of it until that what he did against Joel Berry against North Carolina. But I think that's been a nice springboard for him, and he continues to. I think kind of work at figuring out what that balance is between shooting and facilitating. And but I thought overall a good solid game from him today. A couple of 3 assists, 3 rebounds, took 5 shots and made 3 of them, and got to the line 4 times. So I thought, again, another guy who did a little bit of everything. And I think that's exactly the role they need him to play as they do this: play good defense, get other guys involved, and be aggressive. And I thought he did a good job balancing all those things today.
Yeah, one thing about Newkirk is he's listed at 6'1", 195. He plays so much bigger and stronger than that. I don't know if you guys have noticed that too, or if that's just me. I just think that he plays like such a bigger guard than that, and that's offensively and defensively. He's aggressive, he's strong, he's quick, and you're starting to see maybe him knock some of the rust off from missing a year of basketball and start to look like a much better player. And I think we all have noticed that and talked about it.
The last individual that I want to talk about is Freddie McSwain Jr. On our radio show, we went through and gave letter grades for every player, and Freddie got a very low grade, and I think it was deserved. He's a guy that didn't get to campus until late. It seemed to kind of struggle to get into the rhythm. We saw him take 9 shots in one game, using way too many possessions. what we saw from Freddie McSwain today is exactly what Indiana needs from him if he's going to be a useful rotation player. He had 8 points. He had 4 boards, 2 of them offensive. One of them, I swear, it's like he just hovered in the air for 5 seconds. Like he got to the top of his jump and just stayed there and was able to grab the offensive rebound. It was incredible. A steal. Only took 4 shots. Again, I mentioned the basket cut earlier that he had from the corner. That is Freddie McSwain. Hustle, run the floor, make cuts, make yourself available when a guy is driving like that. Go get offensive rebounds. Exactly what we want to see from him. Really good job from Freddie, and we'll see if he can translate this to games against better competition. Ryan, you were the one who doled out the difficult grade, so I'll give you a chance here to give Freddie some props too, because I think he deserves them after today.
No, I agree. I thought that he played much more the way we expected him to. As you said, 8 points, 4 boards. He didn't take a shot outside of a few feet from the basket, which is his strong suit. He shouldn't be shooting jumpers. But in 11 minutes, he was the guy that we expected him to be. Be aggressive, be active, be athletic. Go out there and mix it up. Don't try and do too much. And Freddie McSwain stepping away from a 10, 15-foot jumper is not what Indiana needs. They need him banging on the inside, grabbing offensive rebounds, being aggressive, going up to block shots, things like that. And this was exactly what you want from him. And I agree. I think that if he does this game to game, that's going to be something that Indiana can use come Big Ten play.
By the way, just another couple quick numbers that were really nice for Indiana. 41.4% from three-point range. Indiana has dipped down into the 38s. The last couple of years, we've seen them up in the 40s, so that was nice to see. And the free throw shooting seems to have stabilized some. Indiana took 32 today. They made 78% of them, so that was nice to see. Coming up on the assembly call, Andy is going to give us one of his patented IU next opponent previews as we're going to talk a little bit of IU Butler. That is next on the assembly call. Real quick, I do want to take a quick minute and tell you why you should activate your free membership to the assembly call. Here are 3 quick reasons. Number 1, it's quick and easy. Go to assemblycall.com/join. It'll take you 15 seconds. Also, it's how you get our best content, because by joining, you'll receive our weekly 6-banner Saturday IU Hoops News Roundup, which our student intern Haley did a great job on this morning. And you'll also get our detailed post-game analysis emails, which I'll start writing as soon as we stop the post-game show. And plus, it's how you connect with us and the assembly call community, because only members can access our moderated post-game live chat and access our free members discussion forum. Both great places to continue discussion of IU basketball after every game. And so if you like what you hear on the assembly call, becoming a member is the next logical step. So join us for free at assemblycall.com/join. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down Indiana's 103-61 victory over Houston Baptist. And this puts Indiana at 8-1 and sets up the Hoosiers for a big game next Saturday against Butler. Another opportunity for Indiana to get a resume-building win, a resume that already is among the 4 or 5 best in the country because of those 2 big high-profile wins. This is another chance. Andy, you obviously are our expert on all things college basketball, and so we kick it over to you. Probably the biggest news that comes out of today, even more important than anything that happened in this Houston Baptist game, is that OG Anunoby was cleared to play. He didn't get in as expected, but it looks like he will be available for the Butler game as he practiced a couple times this week, which is obviously good for Indiana heading into that game.
Well, that's going to be really important, and hopefully he's back at full strength, because Butler's leading scorer is a 6'7" forward who is Keelan Martin, who OG would likely draw the assignment of. I would imagine early on. So he, from a possession standpoint, uses almost a third of Butler's possessions when he's on the court. So high usage guy, not an overly great offensive rating, but is averaging, I think, coming into today about 17 points a game. Butler just beat Cincinnati while we were on here, so they won that by 10. Bounced back from their only loss against Indiana State earlier in the week. But pretty balanced for Butler. They've got they got Martin, who averages 17, and then they've got 5 other guys who average somewhere between 8 and 11 points per game who play the majority of their minutes. Got a couple other rotation guys just that don't score a great deal. So pretty balanced team as you would expect with Butler. They still play at a slower tempo. So I think as we start thinking about what kinds of things are really going to tell the story, I think the pace and the number of possessions in the game are going to be big. Butler plays quite a bit slower than IU, so is IU able to impose their will from a tempo perspective and push the ball? I think that'll be important. Other number to watch, as always with IU, is turnovers, but more so in this case, Butler's defense coming into today, or at least as it sits on KenPom now, 10th in the nation in defensive turnover rate. So IU has to protect the ball. It's not because they're pressing; they're just really solid in the half court, good help defense, and can cause some things there. So I think from things to watch that really jump out is turnovers and the tempo. But it should be an interesting game. I mean, Butler has, when you look at the numbers, Ken Pom predicts a 1-point IU victory, and both teams are in the top 30 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. So a couple really good teams. Should be a high quality game. One of the more enjoyable games I've watched so far this season was when Butler played Arizona on a neutral court. Just a well played game, and should be one that's exciting. I think IU should have a little bit of a size advantage in the backcourt in particular. They got some pretty small guards that play. Tyler Lewis is 5'11", Kamar Baldwin 6 foot, and Avery Whitson 6'2". So even as Ryan said, Newkirk plays a little bit bigger than he is. I think Robert. I think you could say the same thing of, and James has a little bit of size as well. They really don't have, in general, a ton of size there. They've got this Andrew Shravitz who's been there forever. It feels like kind of an undersized big man, but they'll certainly try to make life difficult on Thomas in the post, and hopefully IU can get him rolling because he's another one where they really do seem to have an advantage. So should be a really good game. Really looking forward to it. Probably more so after 3 cupcakes on IU schedule, quite honestly, makes it that much more exciting to really play a good opponent. But I think it should be a fun atmosphere in Indianapolis and a really good game.
Yeah, we need to enjoy this one because there's a couple more cupcakes coming after that game. Butler, pretty battle tested. They beat Northwestern 43rd in Ken Pom, Vanderbilt 77th in Ken Pom, Arizona 22nd, Utah 67th. So they do have 4 wins over top 100 competition. Andy, as we look at this just from a resume perspective, if Indiana can notch this victory as well, how big would it be? And if Indiana loses this game, losing to Butler, obviously there's no shame in that at all. They're a solid team. This isn't one that would sting long term, is it?
No, I mean, in all likelihood, they end up as a top 25 RPI team. So losses to those kinds of teams on neutral court aren't really going to hurt you. I think, obviously, to have 3 really good wins like that, should they get this one, would be huge for IU and just would kind of further put the Fort Wayne game off the radar, in the rear view, whatever you want to say. So, yeah, I don't think a lot to be lost from the game, but I think, again, you start to put together these games the past week or so have done absolutely nothing. But a game like this can certainly, some of this is just to overshadow the fact that the non-conference strength of schedule isn't going to be very good. But at least you can come back and say, hey, well, we won all the big games that we had. So even though the bottom of the schedule wasn't very good, performed really well against the upper echelon competition that they did play. And so far they've done just that against Kansas and North Carolina. And another win like this would be a big win from an RPI perspective for them as they start thinking about seeding.
Well, Andy, we know that you have a Christmas party to get to, so we want to give you an opportunity to give your last call and head on out here, so you make it there on time.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I struggle to take away too much from these games. It's like we try to, figure out things to talk about. But again, I think really balance was good today. A lot of guys got involved. A lot of guys made positive contributions, and nobody else got hurt. So I think we kind of jokingly say that, but it really isn't a joke when you think about some of the injuries that we've seen around college basketball, and even with OG and things like that. And obviously watching Duran Davis go down on that one play. I think somebody tweeted out, yeah, this is why OG's not playing today. And I think that's a fair way to think of it. So I think, we've kind of talked about the season in these mini stretches between the big games. They emerged from another one, 3 convincing wins, got a lot of guys some minutes, didn't run the others into the ground, and hopefully built some confidence in people, and really just looking forward to that Butler game. Just not only just to get back to good competition, but I think a really cool event. Notre Dame looked great today. Didn't manage to beat Villanova, but I think the Notre Dame Purdue game should be great, and a good showcase for what basketball in the state of Indiana is all about next Saturday. So it should be a good one.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Andy. We always appreciate you being here with us.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right, man. Hey, Ryan, let's talk real quick about Robert Johnson, because I know I mentioned him in the banner moment, and he's gotten kind of overshadowed. And I feel like a little bit he's almost starting to fall into the Yogi category, where it's like, last year Yogi would just be so consistently good, and it's like we'd immediately jump past him to talk about some of the other notable performances. But Robert was just so solid today. I mean, only the 1 assist, and the 2 turnovers. I figured he'd have more assists, but the 16 points, the 5 boards, and it's the timeliness of the shots with Robert. That's the thing I'm noticing this year, is it doesn't feel like any of his baskets are gratuitous. It's almost like every single one is a momentum builder, a momentum killer for the other team. Like, I really like how he's picking his spots. And I know we've talked about how James is that guy filling in for the Yogi role of, hey, go get a shot when we need one. But I'll tell you, Robert, he had that pull-up three today. He's really showing himself to be a guy who he can't create quite like James can, but he can pick his spots so well and find an opening and get himself open, whether it's for a nice mid-range shot or a three-point shot. And I just continue to be impressed with his evolution as a junior.
Yeah, I think the thing about Robert that's really interesting right now is he's kind of gotten into that area as a shooter where when he's got a clean look, you almost expect it to go down. I mean, he has really become a consistent shooter, whether it's a jump shooter, whether it's from three or inside. Sometimes he'll take a step in if a guy comes out at him too fast. But yeah, 16 points, 5 rebounds, and he did that in only 23 minutes too, because they got the young guys. They got both Green and Jones got some solid minutes today. So yeah, I agree with you. I just think he's a guy that's easy to overlook. And defensively, he's easily our best perimeter defender. Easily. It's starting to show up on a game-to-game basis. And he's not a guy whose defense is going to show up in the stat sheet. He had 1 steal today, but I thought he was phenomenal. He was all over the guys he was guarding. And he's not going to put up steals or blocks or anything like that, but he's going to be the guy in perfect position defensively. He's going to be really tough to drive on. And I agree. I think he's becoming one of those guys you just are starting to expect things from, which is interesting because last year he was a guy who was up and down at times offensively. He's always been solid defensively, but he was up and down offensively, and maybe he had his confidence shaken some. But again, he's starting to come out and be that guy that you just expect what you got today. Like that was, hey, solid game, Robert. That's what you're supposed to do. So yeah, I thought it was an excellent game for him, and hopefully it continues to be what we see on a regular basis.
I'll tell you what, man, too bad Andy isn't here so he can make fun of me after I say this, but ever since Robert's freshman year, the guy that I've compared him to is Greg Graham. And, from a statistical profile perspective, they're very similar. Greg is a guy who scored, pretty similarly his freshman and sophomore years around the 8-9 point range, and then really took that next step as a junior. And then as a senior became one of the best guards in America. He was phenomenal. And Robert is right on that trajectory. And he's, stepping up just like that here this year. He's Indiana's second leading scorer. Obviously, he's got to get that assist turnover ratio, a little bit more in favor of the assists and less on the turnovers. And I think we'll see that as the season goes along. But he just continues to be rock solid. And I think, to me, I really think that as this season continues to move on, he and Juwan are going to be the rocks on which this team is built. And that's not, look, James Blackman Jr. has been very consistent. Thomas Bryant, very consistent. A lot of these guys are, but there's something not only about the play of Robert and Juwan, but also their personality, how even-keeled they are emotionally. And Tom Crean mentioned this week, actually, how guys really have started to look to Juwan, to be a guy who's going to make a play when you need one, and just his leadership abilities. And I really think, we've a big narrative for the first quarter of the season has been who are the leaders who are going to step up. And I think a lot of guys are going to lead in their own ways. I'm just starting to sense, my sense from, 1,000 miles away, not being there at practice, James and Juwan seem like the guys, kind of the rocks of leadership to me. Are you getting that same sense watching them?
Yeah, I think Bryant you have to consider in there too. But they're definitely 2 quiet guys who probably lead by example more than anything. And you see that on the floor too. I mean, against North Carolina, Robert Johnson was the guy getting everybody involved and getting everybody organized and everything. I mean, James Blackman Jr. did a nice job there too. So did Josh Newkirk. I think it's kind of a leadership by committee thing with this group, but if you're looking for guys who play the right way constantly and make very few mistakes as leaders by example, I agree with you. Juwan and Robert are probably the top 2 candidates for that mantle. But I think also the thing I love about Robert, as you said, though, he's just so even keel. He never gets too high, never gets too low. I think we saw his confidence shaken as a sophomore offensively when he missed had a couple games where he didn't shoot very well. But he's never let that seep into his defensive game. And you can just tell that he leads on both ends of the floor in that way. He plays the right way. He plays smart. And they were mentioning it, he's the guy with the most starts on the team, career starts on the team. And he's going to be one of those guys who winds up being one of the career leaders in things like games played and starts. And, by the time he's done, which is crazy to think because it seems like he's still a young guy, but he's a junior. and he's the leader, and he's one of the older guys on this team, and that's rare since there's no seniors on this team right now.
He's going to be the guy that fans of other Big Ten teams are like, good God, he's still there?
Still there, yeah.
He's played so many minutes.
No, it's absolutely. And so, yeah, I agree. I think he's sort of come into that leadership role, but I don't think it's an outspoken leadership role. I think he's just kind of always in the right place, always doing the right thing. And that becomes leadership after a while.
And we saw some of the vocal leadership from him in the North Carolina game. We talked about that, and so I think that's something that we will see continue to evolve. Anything else from this game that we should touch on? I mean, obviously, we saw a little bit more Tim Priller there. And look, I will say this about Tim Priller: I really think that Priller time is becoming less of just kind of a joke. And to Tim's credit, he's going out there and producing. I mean, his 4 points today, those were 2 really nice basket cuts. He scored with his left hand, looked good. He actually has one of the highest defensive rebounding percentages on the team. So I don't know if garbage time against, sub 250 opponents is going to translate into him ever being able to play, 4 or 5 minutes of meaningful game, meaningful time in a meaningful game. But he is getting better. And that's all you can ask from him. Maybe him having a scholarship was never the right decision in the first place if you want that guy to grow into a rotation player as a junior or senior. But to his credit, I don't know if he showed a lot of progress last year, but he's showing progress this year, which is nice to see. And I thought Grant Galen got in there, made a couple of nice plays on offense too. So those two guys, take it for what it is. But I thought they came in with their minutes and were impressive today.
Yeah, and Galen had a great basket cut, and Thomas Bryant had a phenomenal pass to find him. He made the layup and got fouled. But with Priller, I mean, look, the guy's taking advantage of an opportunity. I mean, regardless of whether this becomes a rotation situation or not, or he gets more minutes, he played 3 minutes, had 4 points, an offensive rebound, and an assist. I mean, look, he took advantage of it. Yeah, they're looking to get him the ball. Yeah, it's against a garbage team, but good for him for taking advantage of it. If it doesn't lead to anything else, this guy is playing college basketball on the highest level, and he's scoring points, and people love him. I mean, if that's all this ever is for him, good for him. I don't see it as something where he's building something else, but yeah, he's definitely improved. There's no question about that. And good for him for taking advantage of it and getting his name in the stat sheet. If that's all this ever becomes, I'll be completely happy with it and look back fondly on his career.
And that's my point. He's doing a little more than getting his name in the stat sheet. He's not going out there and having club trillions. Like, if you actually look at the stats, if Priller is ever going to advance to more than just kind of gimmick Priller time sideshow, then he should go out and dominate in the garbage time that he's playing. And when you look at it, independent of possessions used, because obviously his sample size is really small, he has the highest offensive rating on the team. He has the highest defensive rebounding percentage, the highest offensive rebounding percentage. His assist rate is 22, which is second to Josh Newkirk. Yeah, that's second to Josh Newkirk. His block percentage is high. So, I mean, he is going out there and producing in those minutes. And I think, he gets, a lot of the talk is about, the crowd's going nuts for him, and it feels like this sideshow. And I do think it's worth mentioning that he's improved, he's producing with his minutes, and we don't know where that'll go. And I think it is fair to expect of a junior scholarship player that they can become a rotation player. And, he may not be there yet, but I do want to give him some credit for growing and improving, because he certainly has. And that's good to see from Tim. Very good to see. I think we're ready to move to last call, don't you? Anything else to talk about from this game?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it was a solid win. They did exactly what they had to do, and I think we've covered pretty much every topic on the list for this one.
Okay, but this is a really notable anniversary for Indiana basketball, and we have a couple quick comments about that, which we will get to next. That's coming up on the Assembly Call. Before we do that, one more quick reminder that a great way to support the Assembly Call is by ordering your official Assembly Call t-shirt, which I'm modeling right here. There are 2 versions with our text Assembly Call logo modeled after the script Indiana right here on the front, or you can get our circular Assembly Call logo over the breast pocket area. Go to HoosierProud.com and check out their selection of unique stylish apparel that anyone with Indiana roots will love, which includes our t-shirts. And don't forget the promo code Assembly, ASSEMBLY, for 15% off. It works for our Assembly Call logo t-shirts and anything else you buy. Plus, when you order the t-shirts, we get a little piece of the money that you pay for the t-shirt. So it's a great way to support the show as well. Again, and if you do it, send us a picture so that we can tweet out pictures of you wearing the Assembly Call t-shirt. Again, the URL is HoosierProud.com. Alrighty, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips. Andy Bottoms was with us earlier, had to take off. We are wrapping up talking about Indiana's 103-61 victory over Houston Baptist. And Ryan, I saw a great tweet that was sent out earlier today from your favorite, Will Sheehy, who wished Christian Watford a happy birthday. And of course, it's not actually Christian Watford's birthday, but it is the 5-year anniversary of the Watt shot. The epic shot that Christian Watford made to beat Kentucky. And obviously that's a replay that we've all watched, thousands of times. It is the reason why whenever you mention Christian Watford's name, he is a legend in Bloomington forever. But I just, as I like to do now when this shot comes up, I want to give credit to the two guys on that possession whose contributions don't always get noticed. And the first is Cody Zeller, who laid a great screen. I don't remember who was guarding Verdell Jones, but Verdell gets the inbounds pass, and Cody Zeller just lays out a great screen on whoever's guarding him. And then to Verdell for having the presence of mind to get the ball down the court so quickly, and instead of trying to drive in and force a shot, which, frankly, freshman, sophomore, and maybe even junior year Verdell Jones probably would have done, but he did such a nice job of kicking it out to Christian and driving in to the teeth of the defense so that the defense had to go in and cover him. He didn't just, drift with his dribble. He really cut in with it, got it out to Christian to make the shot possible. And obviously Christian had to do the heavy lifting and make the shot. But I think sometimes we forget how big of a screen Zeller had and how big of a play and pass it was by Verdell. And so I just want to give those two guys credit on the 5th anniversary of a shot that, still reverberates in Indiana basketball, and was certainly a great memory for all of us because that was our 9th or 10th show. That was the first season we've been doing the show. So always a fun memory to relive.
It is. Just looking back on that, that's, one of my favorite moments as an IU fan was that. And then, of course, beating Kentucky last year in the tournament is up there. But I think that sort of the younger generation of Hoosier fans who haven't had a national championship, that is what they look to as their big moment. And it also signaled so much just symbolically of the program sort of rising from the ashes and getting back to a point where it was in the national conversation. I mean, that was a shot heard around the basketball world that day, and nobody was talking about anything else. And so I think it was that and the NBA lockout were the only topics of conversation that whole day. So it's such a fond memory. And I remember I was in Chicago and busy, and I tuned into the show and it was you screaming.
It was me solo.
Yeah, I know. It was you by yourself screaming like a madman. And I was like, no, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great memory. And I never get tired of seeing that replay.
No, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. All right, let's go to last call, Ryan. Your final thoughts on Indiana's victory over Houston Baptist today.
Well, I think it was a solid game. I thought it started slowly, as we talked about. Early Saturday game is always rough for these guys because it's so outside of their normal schedule. So it's hard sometimes to get going. Once they got warmed up, I thought they played the right way. I thought they executed, did what they were supposed to do, and I thought that pretty much everybody chipped in. There were very few guys where I could say, maybe not really anybody who I said, no, that was a bad game for him. I think everybody pretty much had solid points you can build on. Now it's time to get locked in and sort of focus on that team that's becoming an in-state rival in Butler. And that should be a fun one next Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. And, of course, we'll be here after.
Absolutely. That game against Butler is Saturday, December 17th. It will be on the Big Ten Network, and it starts at 5 o'clock Eastern time. We might do a little pregame show action for that one over on Facebook Live. Make sure you've liked us on Facebook, facebook.com/Assembly Call. That's where we do our IU Hoops halftime reports now, but we will certainly be here after the game for the postgame show. For my last call, just a couple quick comments. Obviously, number one, OG Anunoby cleared to play, did not play, which was great to see, but from all the postgame comments I've seen, it sounds like Indiana expects him to be ready for Butler, which is terrific. When he first went down, I was scared that he wasn't going to be back for the Louisville and Wisconsin stretch. And so to have him back for Butler is really good. I don't think that we can expect him to go out there and play, 22, 25 minutes right off the bat, because as we all know, when you miss, a couple of weeks of basketball, it takes a little while to get your conditioning back. And then it takes a little while when you've had practice conditioning to get back into game shape, especially a game of that magnitude where it's on a neutral court and not at home, where sometimes the home crowd can kind of pump you up, even if you're a little bit tired. So I would temper expectations for OG, but just his presence, and if he can go out there and give Indiana 15 to 17 really solid minutes, that obviously is huge because he's one of the best two-way players in America, which would be nice to see. And then finally, I just want to issue congratulations to Marnie Mooney, Indiana's academic advisor, who got married this week. She's always been a supporter of the show and obviously a huge supporter of the program because she got married yesterday. Instead of going off on a honeymoon or doing whatever, she was right there in the stands watching the game. She is, I think anybody who wants to compete for the #1 fan of Indiana basketball, you got to go through Marnie. And obviously her last name isn't Mooney anymore, but I'm not sure how to pronounce her new last name, so I don't want to muck it up here. But congratulations to Marnie on her marriage. That is awesome to see. And now she, of course, is in the midst of the toughest couple of weeks of her job as the guys are in the final week of the semester. And so we wish all of the guys good luck with their finals. One of the reasons why we love this program is because we take the academics as seriously as we take the basketball, which is always great to see. So hopefully the guys finish strong and then are ready to let off a little bit of steam next Saturday against Butler, a big game. We'll be here. We hope you are. Until then, take care, everybody.